Poet Audre Lorde once said, if I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. For Black Americans, that reality has been all too familiar. We push back on those who try to put limitations on us, but sometimes we unintentionally put limitations on ourselves. Black excellence knows no bounds. And when it comes to the world of music, my next two guests are adamant they will not be confined to just R&B, jazz, and hip-hop. Everett, you said music is your soul. Why do you say that?
Well, I feel like we all are given something special in life. We're all given particular talents. And sometimes it takes us a while to figure out what those talents are. I feel I was fortunate enough to find out my talent was in music early. And so I was able to develop my talent in music. But we all contribute something to the universe. And we all have talents that we can contribute to the universe. And part of the job is just finding out what that talent is. And then once we find out what that talent is, go forth and share it with the world, and it makes the world a better place.
What first attracted you to opera? What made you, and when did you know you wanted to sing it?
I knew nothing about opera. Actually, growing up, I had a wonderful junior high school band director who was a man of color. Because you have to think about it, I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama,
Right.
during the civil rights movement, and schools were not desegregated in Alabama until the mid '60s. And so I did not go to an integrated high school until I was in the seventh grade. But I had a black band director in the seventh grade. And then I had a black band director when I went to high school, and a black choir director. And they were really just instrumental in helping me to see, because I saw role models. I saw people whom I could emulate and be like. And so I went to college actually to be a band director. And my first audition was with a man who you will probably know the name Jim Neighbors or Gomer Pyle.
Yeah.
Well, my first audition at Alabama was with his voice teacher, and his voice teacher was named Bill Stevens, and Bill Stevens is the one who encouraged me to consider going into singing as opposed to going into playing my instrument. So I did that. I decided to be a voice major in college at the University of Alabama, and that sort of started it off. But I knew nothing really about opera. I just knew that I had a voice that people told me could sing opera. And that's sort of how it got started.
To sing opera, you had to learn Latin, and you moved to Italy to learn Latin. That must have been a great experience. What was that like for you?
Well, in order to sing opera, we had to learn French, German, Italian, Latin, some Spanish, because their operas, the main operas, the major operas are in French, German, and Italian. The main oratorios, many are in Latin. And so you had to learn that. And as a voice major in college, I took German and French, but I did not take Italian and I didn't take Latin. And so I thought the best way to learn those languages was to actually go to the country. So I went to Italy and studied there, and it was just an incredible experience because it was, I feel like I probably learned more in the taxi cab coming from the airport to the to the hotel, just listening to the inflections and the way that the people in Italy spoke. And because that's what I had to try to recreate on the stage as I sang.
You are now the professor of voice at UK, Kentucky. How did that opportunity come your way?
I have been now the professor of voice and director of opera at the University of Kentucky for this will be my 30th year this fall, and I'm just so excited about that. And actually, it came because someone called my voice teacher to say that the University of Kentucky was looking to diversify its faculty and wanted to know if he knew of any students of color who might be able to apply for a position that was opening up in 1991. Well, actually 1990 at the University of Kentucky. And my voice teacher told me about the position, and I went in 1990 and auditioned for the position and interviewed for the position. But at the time, I was also teaching at Knoxville College in Knoxville, Tennessee, an HBCU. And I did not want to leave Knoxville College because I felt like I had sort of stirred the waters and just gotten some things going there. I was the director of the College of Fine Arts. And so I turned down the position at UK first, and then they called me back and said, well, if we hold the position a year, will you take it next year? And I said, yes. So in 1991, I left Knoxville College and went to UK, and it's been a wonderful marriage. And we've developed some wonderful singers there who are now singing all over the world, and we are growing the next generation of young opera singers.
You mentioned conducting. I've always been fascinated by conductors conducting. When you conduct, tell me about the whole experience. What are you trying to do with the orchestra to pass through you to the audience?
I've always thought of myself as an interpreter of music. You know, you have some people who are composers and they compose music. I don't compose music, but I try to interpret music. I feel like that's part of my gift. And one of the things that I think about when I'm conducting is how did the composer want to interpret this music so that the people would be able to receive it. And so when I am in front of an orchestra or I am in front of a choir, I realize that the people who are there have come from all of their different situations in life, their daily lives. And when they come to the theater or to the concert hall, all of a sudden we have to have a way to focus everybody so that we're on the same page. And I feel that that's part of the things that I do as a conductor is I try to take all of those people who have all of their different lives and all of their different things going on in their lives and try to help them shut all of that out so that for that 2 or 3 hours that we're together working, that we're focusing on interpreting the music that the composer put in front of us. And how do we become one unit creating that music and then transmitting it to the audience. And so that's what I try to do as a conductor.
Let's talk about the American Spiritual Ensemble. 1995, you founded it. You're also the director. 2 questions. What is the overall mission of the American Spiritual Ensemble? And for folks who don't know, the difference between spiritual and gospel music.
Well, those are both very good questions. First, the American Spiritual Ensemble, the mission of the American Spiritual Ensemble is to keep the American Negro spiritual alive. And I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama during the Civil Rights Movement, and spirituals were front and center. Martin Luther King loved spirituals and talked about spirituals all the time. He used spirituals in his sermons. And so I grew up hearing those spirituals, and I wanted to make sure that this music did not die. I call spirituals the mother music, the music that gave America a voice. And this is music that was created here, created in a very difficult time in our lives. But it has become the music that has given American music its style. And so it was created here, and from the spirituals, jazz, blues, gospel, pop, all of that grew from the spiritual. So I think of that music as the most important music in America. And so I wanted to make sure that we did not lose that important music. And so the American Spiritual Ensemble has now been together for 26 years, and we've toured all over the world, and we have been able to perpetuate and tell the story of this music so that it is not lost.
Everett, I lived in Montgomery, Alabama in 1965. You grew up there around the corner from Martin Luther King. Did you know him growing up? Did you know his family growing up?
My family knew the King and the Abernathy family. Actually, my father was a deacon at the church where Ralph Abernathy was the minister. And my dad was made a deacon by Ralph Abernathy. And my dad just died this past March at the wonderful age of 96. And so, but through my family knew both the King and the Abernathy family, and so it was just such a rich time growing up in Montgomery, Alabama. Although I didn't know it at the time, I was an only child, and my parents were very protective of me in terms of, it was a very tumultuous time in Montgomery during the civil rights movement in the '60s, and but they were very involved in the churches there, and it was it was something that I will never forget, and it certainly has shaped my life since then.
With more and more people of color performing and being recognized in the genre of opera, what do you see for the future of opera and the impact it can have on Black music?
When I was growing up, I wondered if there was I didn't even know that there was a world of opera. And when I was introduced to opera in college and learned that my part of my gift was that I could sing opera, it was just, it opened the world to me. What I didn't realize is that there were not a lot of blacks and people of color accepted into opera. And so I went in it thinking that the playing field was going to be even. And then I realized that it was not even. And so it was a struggle at first to gain acceptance. But what I realized was that talent equalizes things, because while they may not want me to come through the front door and I go through the back door, once I get on stage and I sing, then all of a sudden the barriers begin to come down. And that certainly happened with Marian Anderson, Leontine Price, some of the great opera singers. And a lot has to do with the Black Lives Matter movement. I think a lot of organizations are realizing the structural racism that has still prevalent in their organizations. And many are beginning to now look at the way their structure is in their organization and say, hey, we need to change this. We need to have more people at the table. And so I'm involved in a lot of that in different organizations to just try to bring more people to the table so that young kids who are coming up and going to the opera will see people like them on stage. We'll see people like them conducting the orchestra. We'll see people like them in the orchestra. And so that's when great change is really going to happen, when we have more diversity in all facets of the performing arts, and certainly in the administration areas of the performing arts.
Everett McCorvey, thank you so much for being with me, and have a great one, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to connect with you. I'm just so proud of all that you are doing to bring all of these issues to the forefront, and I'm just happy to know you.
Thank you, sir. You have a great one.
Thank you.
Kerwin Young, thank you so much for being on All Things Men. And by the way, where are you?
I'm in my home studio.
Nice, nice. Kerwin, your path to becoming a symphony composer is a very interesting one because you didn't start out doing classical music. You started out doing hip hop and R&B. What prompted you to make that switch?
Well, the first records I made ended up in films like Do the Right Thing, Green Card, Sister Act 2. And I got an interest in doing music for film and television during that time. And in fact, I was a composer on the first season of New York Undercover. And I realized that I needed to comprehend orchestration and being able to write for the different instruments if I wanted to get uh, a higher level of that type of work, writing for orchestra. And so that was my way in. I wanted to really write music for film and television, and that led me to study composition.
You had mentioned earlier, Do the Right Thing, and I want to know, how did Spike Lee in that movie affect you, change your life?
It just gave me insight into that. Okay, doing rap music, our songs can end up in the film. Work that I'm doing can end up in the movie, and so that just opened my eye to something I always had an interest in. But, I used to work at a movie theater, when I was in high school. And I always loved film. I've been a fan of film since I was a little boy, and I've always wanted to write music for film. And that was just one way closer. And then 2 months after that, I worked with Professor Griff on his first album, Pawns in the Game. And it's a song from that album that was in the movie Green Card, which was scored by Hans Zimmer. It's one of Hans Zimmer's first films, one of his first 5 or 6 or something like that. And after that, I worked on Sister Act 2, and then you know that was kind of it. But it just put light on an opportunity. That's what it did. But it didn't change. It just broadened my perspective. How about that?
You studied with famous people.
Hmm. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I mean, um, like I said, I started studying in '94, and it took me 8 years to really get a full comprehension. I first enrolled at the Paris Conservatory. I was 32, and they told me I was too old. So then I waited another 7 years before applying to any school. I was just done with the whole educational system. And I met Chin Yi on MySpace, if you remember MySpace, and
Yeah.
told her my situation. And I wanted to, study orchestration, not even composition, just orchestration for maybe a few months. And she talked to the head of the department, and they convinced me to do a full degree. So that's how that happened. Chin Yi, her husband Joe Long, and Bobby Watson, the jazz masters, those are my teachers, those are my composition teachers. And prior to studying with them, I studied with Dr. Sharon J. Willis at Spelman College for about a year and a half. She's got an opera company in Atlanta, Georgia, as well. And she was my first composition teacher outside of school. And then former trainer was Chin Yi, Joe Long, and Bobby Watson.
What upcoming projects do you have that we should know about?
But right now, there's Next Level, which is run by the U.S. State Department. We've got orientation next week. We're sending artists to 8 different countries around the world. I'm the Performer Rights Associate, so that's work I'm involved with right now. We've got a concert coming up in the spring with the DC Youth Orchestra based on Lupita Nyong'o's book Soulway.
If someone watching this says he's doing what I want to do, what advice would you give to them?
Persevere. Um, Don't expect anything to happen overnight. Also, know your business. No music publishing, no copyrights. That's a big part of the game, more than anything, because that's your legacy, that's your estate. So performing rights and intellectual property. Be on top of that, and that's it. But persevere definitely.
Yep. Don't give up.
That's right.
Kerwin Young, thank you so much for being on All Things Ben. All
Thanks
the
for
best,
having me.
my friend. His real name was Edward Kennedy Ellington, but we all knew him as Duke Ellington. Born April 29, 1899, he was raised by two talented musical parents in a middle-class Washington, D.C. neighborhood. He began playing piano as a child and got the nickname Duke. By the time he was 17, he was playing professionally. Eventually, the Duke started composing music, and in 1923, he moved to New York, where he formed his own band. By 1927, he was performing at Harlem's famous Cotton Club, which became a major turning point in his career. Classic Duke Ellington songs include Mood Indigo, Sophisticated Lady, I Got It Bad, and That Ain't Good, Take the A Train, and many more. In his more than 50-year career, Ellington was awarded a number of musical degrees, the Medal of Freedom, as well as a posthumous Pulitzer Prize for Music back in 1999. Duke Ellington passed away May 24, 1974, in New York City at the age of 75. I had a great time with our guest today. If you want to be part of the conversation, go to Twitter and Facebook at All Things Men BNC. See you next time.